production is brought to you by DHBN, WTHC Radio, and Stoner Records.
Stepping up strong with a righteous plea. Summer Parker fighting for you and me. Patients need what the doctor has said. Safe access now to the meds they've read. One love, one fight, don't you delay. Rights for the people in every way. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. Safe access is the anthem sound. The struggle is real, but so is the fire. For health and hope we climb higher. Stand with the ones who can't stand alone. For every voice deserves a throne. Compassion leads where the laws resist. A healer's heart can't coexist with barriers blocking what we deserve. The people's needs must be preserved. One love, one fight, don't you delay. Rights for the people in every way. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. Safe access is the anthem sound. Summer's voice, it carries the flame for justice. Chant her name again. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. For the people's care, we will sustain.
Hello. Welcome in to the very first ever episode of Patients for Safe Access by your hostess with the mostest. That would be me, Summer Parker. So, guys, we have been doing all kinds of things in Oklahoma. I am from Oklahoma. I became a patient in the medical marijuana industry in 2019. I then traveled into sales in the industry, and now I am stepped back, and my full-time position in the industry is as an advocate and activist. So advocating is something that I think came naturally to me. I've advocated for my health in the past and, had to learn all their lingo. So learning the lingo of the politicians has been quite entertaining and fun. Yes. Welcome, everyone. Pop them comments up there. So if you are familiar with Oklahoma, you'll know some of the information I'm talking about. If you're unfamiliar with Oklahoma, well, let's get you familiar. So we are what we call a total THC state. And what that means for our state is that it doesn't matter if it's THCA, THCO, THCV, THCP, it all counts as THC. So the reason why I bring that up is April of 2024, and which I actually have the letter here with me. So give me just 1 second. April of 2024, the Department of Agriculture put out a letter basically stating that THC is THC. Again, reiterating that total THC state. So the reason why that is important right now in the state of Oklahoma, and I'm sure this is going on in your states as well. So how many of you guys have had the experience of walking into a gas station, bodega store, vape shop, tobacco store, or any of those things, and you find these THCA pre-rolls, or you find these disposable cartridges and things like that are quote unquote hemp compliant, right? So as an advocacy group, what we chose to do was that we go in and we purchase products at retail shelves, off of the retail shelf. We then submit that product for independent testing, okay? So again, total THC state. Most states have it where it's just simply if it's over the 0.3 of Delta-9 allowance, which is THC, the psychoactive compound, then it's considered compliant as long as it's under that 0.3. So in our state, with it being advertised and marketed as THCO, PV, etc., these are actually illegal products being sold in our state. So I had the great pleasure of having a meeting last week on the 27th And in that meeting, we had 4 members of our Patients for Safe Access group in that meeting. We had myself and then my boyfriend, Charles Rabina. And then there was also John Frazier, who goes by AKA Old School. Check him out on TikTok, Facebook, etc. He's a hilarious old man, love him to pieces. And then we also had my brother from another mother. We had Anthony Smith there. So those were the 4 members from Patients for Safe Access that were there. And then in addition to that, we had Senator George Burns, who recently wrote a bill, Senate Bill 320, trying to cap off our purchase limits per week. And so I had called him up and I had expressed a opposition to his bill. And I was talking to him about the hemp sector issues, because in the process of testing products, we've tested in the medical marijuana industry. We have tested in the hemp sector. We've tested in soil and water. We've tested in tobacco. So we've tested lots of different industries throughout this process. And when we look at the hemp sector issues, out of about 50 different tests that we tested for products purchased within the state of Oklahoma, okay, about 80% of those products failed for being over 0.3 Delta 9. Now, that's not even adding the other THC compounds. That's just being over 0.3 in Delta 9. So these products are not Farm Bill compliant. How do I say that? I compare the current situation with the gas stations, bodega stores, and all of that with the THCA stuff. I compare that to the 2010 experience where we had the K2 spice movement. And when I was in this meeting, and I'll tell you some more people that were in there. Safira, Grandma's on podcast member. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I've got my granddaughter today, so it's going to be, every once in a while I'll have to pop off to talk to her for a second. So the other people that were there was multiple representatives from the Department of Agriculture's office. There were multiple representatives from the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, multiple representatives from the Attorney General's office, and multiple representatives from the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. Now, I'm just little old me, okay? I am a hippie stoner girl who is all about my plant and my plant medicine, So when we were talking to these people and we were expressing the THCA issues and stuff like that, we explained, like I said, that about 80% of these products had failed for being over 0.3. But then we also had about 30% of the products in the hemp sector that we tested that failed for pesticides and heavy metals. So what we were able to deduce was that we found out that the hemp sector doesn't even require them to test for pesticides and heavy metals. And so that's one of the things. Oh, thank you, Charles. Charles is watching in. So with them not testing for heavy metals and pesticides in the first place, that was something that I really wanted the senator to understand and see, because if he wants to write legislation for things, we need legislation to protect the consumer from this K2 spice movement / THCA, THCV, all of that. So our advocacy group, we advocate for zero tolerance, for zero chemicals, and all inhalable, consumable agricultural products. The reason for that being is because not only did we find pesticide and heavy metal fails in the hemp sector, but we found them in the medical marijuana sector, and we found them in the tobacco sector. So this meeting was a really, really good meeting. By the end of the meeting, my 30 some odd tabs of stuff for them to review and take home and read their homework, right? They came to the conclusion that they wrote a letter in 2010 about the K2 spice movement in getting that product out of those retail locations because of the fact that they were illegal products, right? So I think we're going to be seeing that happen again in the state of Oklahoma, at least. There are many states that have chosen to ban these products altogether. And we did ask for that. You know what I mean? We did ask for the products to be banned. However, banning them is not something that is foreseeable. However, they can issue out this letter that basically states to them that the sales of these products are illegal sales. If they're over 0.3 of Delta 9, they're considered marijuana. Even if it's a 1.2%, it's still marijuana. It's over the 0.3. So therefore, it needs to be being sold at a licensed dispensary. OMA only regulates, and this is our medical marijuana authority, Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority, okay? They are only responsible for regulating licensed entities, meaning a grow, a processor, or a dispensary. Department of Ag in our state is only responsible for regulating and enforcing 0.3 or less. So when they have a harvest and they process that material into a product, meaning the hemp sector guys, okay, there's not even a test required when they do that. The only test required on a hemp harvest is like 15 days to 30 days before harvest. When they go out there and they do an in-field sample and they test this product, and I'm sure a lot of it comes back saying that's under 0.3, because at that point the plant isn't even finished maturing. It isn't finished, being dried and cured and all of these different steps that have to be taken. But guess what? You leave it growing another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. What goes up? Your potency. Your potency goes up. So they're not regulating this properly. And again, that was something I wanted the senator to understand and, have pointed out in there. So in asking these agencies questions that they really didn't have great answers for, that did give him that information. And I was able to look over at him and tell him, look, dude, this is where we need you. This is the legislation we need. We need this shit cleaned up, So we, again, like I said, we're fighting for zero tolerance, zero chemicals, and all inhalable, consumable agricultural products. So when we talk about agricultural products and agricultural practices, right? So I'm one of these people. I make up brochures and flyers and binders and all kinds of stuff. But anyways, so when we talk about that, we need to look at things like testing water and soil samples. So if you're a commercial grow and processor and you continue to have issues within your organization of failed products, then you need to be looking into that further. Investigate that. Is it the nutrients you're using? Is it the soil you're using? Is it the water that you're using? In our state, we have a lot of well water people. We have a lot of rural communities that, service their grows from their well waters. And if that well water has never been tested, but yet you've got, say, heavy metals you're failing for. The great thing about Mary Jane, the great thing about our beautiful plant, she is so sexy. She is a bioaccumulator. She is a soil remediator. If you're familiar with the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, they literally used hemp plants to clean up that disaster, that mess, that surface mess. So this plant loves to suck up all these heavy metals, loves to suck up all these pesticides, loves to draw in anything that is in that soil and water. So test that stuff, guys. Don't just continue to put a product out there that's not good for the patient. That's not okay. So practice with using living soil. Practice using organic practices. You can use ladybugs and neem oil and all kinds of things besides using a pesticide. Clean and sanitize are like the big things. Clean and sanitize your grows, your processing areas, all of that. If it's not a clean and sanitized area and you have got a contamination issue somewhere, it's going to be even harder for you to figure it out. Let's see here. Essential oils instead of chemicals, like I said, neem oil and stuff like that. So we are being poisoned, unbeknownst to us, through poor agricultural practices. We have to get involved to change our future. I was never a person that wanted to go to the state capitol and advocate. I didn't want to know these politicians' names. I didn't want to know what side of the fence they stood on. And yes, ignorance was bliss. I was freaking happy and I didn't know a damn thing. I was stupid and ignorant about it. You know what I mean? But now I am diving headfirst, balls deep into politics just to try to advocate for the consumer and for the patient to have the access to clean, quality, safe medicine in final form at all times, whether it's from the medical marijuana industry or the hemp industry or the tobacco industry. So that's a big deal. Tobacco, I'll kind of touch base on that one really quick, getting out of the meeting for a second. But tobacco, we tested White Owl brand white grape cigars. And when we got that test back, it failed for multiple pesticides and failed for cadmium, arsenic, and lead. Now I've had people ask me, oh, well, dumbass, why are you testing tobacco products? You're supposed to be in the marijuana industry. Well, that's because a lot of people use these white owl, white grape cigars to cut open and roll a blunt with. Saphira. Not so loud. Okay, thank you. It's okay. So anyways, a lot of people use those to wrap their blunts in. Some people use hemp wraps, cones, papers. Some people use cigars to do this in. So of course we're going to test those products as we can. You know what I mean? We have a whole bunch of papers, wraps, and cones currently sitting at the lab waiting to be tested. So the lab used to test for us for free, and that was Scissortail Labs, and they are unable to continue testing for us for free, and that is totally understandable. They did about $20,000 in testing for our organization last year, so I just want to shout out to them and thank them for everything that they've done to help our organization and to help the advocacy journey in protecting the patient. So huge, huge, huge thank you to them. So they are still offering us a discounted rate on test. So the papers, wraps, and cones that are there, it's going to be about $2,000 to have all of that tested. So we do have a GoFundMe that we are running, and that GoFundMe is for the purchase of products and for the cost of any associated testing. So I will drop that GoFundMe link into the comments down below, or if Hippie still has that, he can drop it in there, and we will have that up. And if you guys don't mind, the cost of a pre-roll, $1, something like that, it goes a long ways in exposing what is in our medicine and bringing that awareness to the patient. So let's see here. Oh,
Hi, Summer. Hi.
Come on in.
What is the? Because I'll write it right here, and then we got to do our 420 song. So I forgot to tell you about that. So
Okay.
GoFundMe, I have it written. GoFundMe. And what's the dollar sign?
Wait.
No, that's the Cash App.
That's Cash App.
Yeah, what do I have to write here? Is there something I can write for it or no? I have
Venmo also. Let me look at it and see what it's under. I don't have Cash App, unfortunately.
Okay.
My Cash App got shut off for some reason. I was really sad about that. So it's at Parksie, Parksie 78, and that's on Venmo.
RKSIE.
PARKSIE 78 on Venmo. So we have both of those. We have the Venmo and we have the Cash App. So.
All right. We got to do our 420 song and we'll be right back. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to interrupt you.
You're fine.
Oh, I took you down, removed you.
Oh man, that looks like it's our last one, man.
That is our last one, man.
Good thing we can scrape the pipe, bro. Never gonna be bankrupt again. 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 Gee! Morning had to scrape my pipe. Knew that when I went to bed last night. jumped on my bike and pedaled downtown, on the lookout for the one John Brown. Found him in a corner parking lot, smoking spliffs, and said, "Here, man, you want to take a hit?" I said, "I'm never gonna be bankrupt again. Never gonna be bankrupt again. Never gonna be bankrupt again. Never gonna be bankrupt again." Went back home to put the seeds in the soil. Compost recipe from breading I know. Water pH to 6.1. Jah in control of the ebb and flow. Planting seeds, putting flower in my hand so that I will never away bankrupt again. I said I'm never gonna be bankrupt again. 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 Always bringing flower to my friends. Always connecting to the music of medicine. Always finding ways to sing. Positivity and healing vibes. Always attracting my tribe. Always vulnerable to the tides. Always accountable for my strides. Holding on, not folding beyond. Letting go and letting you know. Bankrupt isn't never gonna be a part of my flow. I said I'm never gonna be bankrupt again. 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 Driving around, I see John Brown and said, "Dead man," and said, "They're never gonna be bankrupt again." I said, "Hey John Brown, can I give you a hand so that you yourself will never be bankrupt again?" I said, never gonna be bankrupt again. 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 Wow!
Hey, we're back. All right. So thank you for that. We will never be bankrupt again. I love that song. First time I watched this podcast, I heard that song and I was like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I absolutely love it. So thank you for choosing that one, Hippie. So one of the other things really quick to talk about in regards to politics and stuff is that strength is in numbers, right? Strength is in numbers because when individuals unite for a shared goal, their collective voice has the potential to influence policies. Ellie, come here, baby. Sorry. It's okay. All right. So it has the potential to influence policies, practices, and industries. And what I have found in that is when Charles and I first started going up to the Capitol, a lot of the times it was just me and him. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of times that people did not want to hear us. They did not want to let us through the big brown door. They had no interest in our conversation and or what we had to say. You know, the more after we built Patients for Safe Access, the more people that came on board with us that were willing to go up to the Capitol with us and knock on those doors and demand change and, you know, ask for that change was strength in numbers. And so, you know, definitely get people behind you for your cause. If you have issues going on in your state that you're like, how do I address this? They don't listen to me. I'm just a singleton. Okay, get your strength in numbers for real. It will definitely help in the advocacy journey. So we have a guest coming on today. I'm not sure if he's backstage yet or not, but we will be talking about Ollie and Hunter and their location, Terpene Station in OKC, and some of the things that they are doing so to help us out. So Hippie, are they back there yet? Not yet. Okay. All right. Well, then we'll just keep on rolling with some other stuff in the meantime. So, let's see. What can I talk about on that? So, Terpene Station, the location that this guy operates and runs, they are one of the participants in our Project 22, the War at Home program here in the state of Oklahoma. So, that program was initially started by a gentleman called Rob Speed. And he has a dispensary in Shawnee, Oklahoma called Rob and Sons. My friend, my very dear friend, James Ladebush, he helped, you know, he's been helping to get the awareness out there to get other dispensaries on board with this program. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the program while we're waiting on Ollie, okay? So the program is that on the 22nd of every month, the first 22 veterans that come through the door with an Oklahoma MMJ card are able to receive 22 grams of flower for 22 cents. Now, it's critical that we get growers to pair up with these dispensaries to do this program because it's basically taking it from grower to patient using through the dispensary as the navigating channel. Of course, we have to do that. We can't negate metric or point of sale or any of that stuff. And so that's how they have figured out how to do that. And so Oklahoma growers, if you're listening in on this and you want to be a participant to this program and to help us get the word out there and to make it more accessible and affordable for our veterans to get their medical cannabis when they need it. So I think that'll be a big deal. And we definitely need more people involved. I want to say we have somewhere around a dozen locations throughout the state of Oklahoma that are currently participant in the program. So that gives our veterans 12 different locations throughout the state that they can go to pick up that medicine at an affordable price. So definitely want to bring more people on there. There's a lady named Crystal Smotherman that she's working on this Project 22 program. So is Jemicina Lemon. And so when those ladies get more information out, they're going to be helping to coordinate the efforts in a little bit more of a efficient manner. So that'll be great. Okay, so it looks like Ollie is in the green room now. So if you want to go ahead and pop him in here, Hippie, that'd be great. Hey, Ollie. What's up, my buddy?
How are you doing today?
We are blessed to be here, right?
Amen.
So welcome to WTHC Radio and to the Patients for Safe Access podcast. So in the back room, we have the Hippie, and he is the one who coordinates the show and helps put it all together. So I just had the great pleasure of meeting Mr. Ollie this last weekend on Saturday. And that's because my friend Old School that I was telling you guys about, he hosts a podcast on Saturdays from the Terpene Station, not from the dispensary side, but from the event side. So Ollie, you want to tell us a little bit about Terpene Station and stuff first, and then we'll go into some questions?
Okay, absolutely. Well, it's nice that the Terpene Station that they're able to get us the cannabis and do it through the OMA regulated process, and so patients can access with their card. They can get the samples of what we're doing. And the Terpene Station essentially it's on Shields Boulevard. It's one of the old pharmacies that converted, and now the Terpene Station. What we're doing is basically the whole point of the Queen of the Hill is we're searching out for the best flower on the shelf. The concept of the Terpene Station is kind of built around the live terpenes that Miss Newell has, the live terpene distributions for the state of Oklahoma. And those are cannabis-derived terpenes that have never been dried or frozen. And so when you look at the testing, they're in the 90s, high 90s for purity. The distinction is because it was never dried or frozen. When you smoke it, you taste it in any form of vape or any form of oil that's been baked, it tastes like the flower is what people out. 60% blow it out and they say, oh my God, it tastes like flower. And about maybe 40% of them say, where's the cough? Because when people do that little cough, that's the triethyl citrate and alpha bismol that they slip into the cartridges. That's that odorless, flavorless terpene. So it's not too terpy. So basically, Terpene Station, we focus on cannabis only products. So we don't use dilutants. We don't use botanical. There's no form of anything in our product that's not cannabis based. That's the first thing. Second thing is we use, the live terpenes, meaning they came from a living plant that were never dried or frozen. So with that in mind, education, sort of, I guess you would call it unique product instead of, obviously we have solventless pre-rolls. We do the core of the business for the industry, but we use those terpenes to infuse our products, whether it be our diamond stones. You can see behind me the infused flower. It's not sprayed, dipped, or painted. It's not used in an ethanol. It's a proper infusion. So you break it down, it's dry into the fingers. It's not sticky or wet, and it breaks down. It smokes. There's no waste. There's nothing left behind. And so the idea was, I'm on the live terpenes. I'm on the manufacturing, like on the design side of it. And when those products came to market, we had a lot of people buy the live terpenes, but then they put other things in it and they make other types of profiles and then they sell it. And so this idea of mine was to take these terpenes and distribute them in the name of the terpene is where the plant came from, in the fields. And so if it's a lifter, it's an actual lifter from the Oregon CBD Seed Company. In 10 days, we produce almost 2,000 liters of terpenes. The most we get out of an acre is 16 liters. So you can imagine the scale of what we're doing. And we have a very small window. And so this was my way of bringing the product line to the market so that it's an unadulterated view and the customer base can actually see, patients can see, this is, whether you're in the rec market of customer or whether you're in the medical market of patients, this is what cannabis only products look like. And so the Terpene Station's behind that with the education. It's the concept really is just cannabis only products and information. When people come in, like a lot of people want to know where does the golden oil from the cartridges come from, how's it made? And so we'll, in my education standpoint, we would make our own. This is something that's right. This was fractionally distilled glass heads that allowed people to not have to buy the $250,000 piece of equipment. Instead, they could spend 10 or 15 grand and do it in their own facility without having to buy some sort of European piece of equipment. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. This is what allowed us to have cartridges, the fractionally distilled oil that's so common today, whether it be in our edibles, whether it be in almost every vape pen. If it's not a rosin cart or a live resin cart, it is some form of fractionated oil. So, this type of stuff is where kind of our background, and I guess, just a little bit about the point of the Terpene Station is that information, the education, breaking down the barriers. That's what the Queen of the Hill is, a way of us creating culture that people can come. I'm next door. That's where my schools and tools. I have my storage space there. So This allows people to come through the regulated system, try the product, and have a voice in the selection of what works on the shelf.
So let me tell them about Queen of the Hill real quick, because I hadn't summarized that. So in Old School's podcast, what he's doing is that, like, at the different events and things like Cowboy Cup, Harvest Fest, Crunkpalooza, etc., when people are entering for that prize, it's not that it's a pay to play, but like if you can't afford to pay to enter, you can't play, right? So that's one of those things where you have your smaller craft selectors that maybe don't have the finances to enter into these big events, right? And so what John has built here is the Queen of the Hill race. And what they're doing is they sample out, they give you your pop top with, I think, 1 gram of product in it for each strain that they're sampling that week. And you have a panel of people with John and Ollie and a couple others, but then you have the whole room of people that until they run out of samples for that specific date, you can still come in and get samples and, test it out. They've built this amazing questionnaire form that, it breaks down different factors for judging the product. Okay. And this is truly, judged by the patients for the patients. And that, you take the answer sheet at the end, you give all your data back to Ollie and Hunter, and they compile who is the Queen of the Hill for that week. And so I can tell you last week, the Golden Skunk, is that what it was called?
We had 3 of them. That was we had the GMO, right? There was the Green Country Skunk.
That one.
Yes.
That one, that lit me on fire, bro. Like, I had been on a tolerance break. I consumed that. And like halfway through it, I was like, what am I even doing? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I was
right.
like,
We normally don't do 3 of them, but it was kind of what I call a farm off. This type of stuff we've been doing since Washington. I wasn't in the Colorado curve, but the Queen of the Hill, this type of thing is just, it allows, like the environment on the West Coast, you could see any testing of anyone at any time. So in the state of Washington, Oregon, if it's circa 2000, let's say 8, 9, 10, 11, we got analytical testing, but you as a patient could go see any brand in the state, even though it was medical and there was no metric. And you could see through Analytical 360 what those brands testing was. And it was one of these situations where if you failed, it stayed on the board. So if you were dirty, it stayed on the board. You either had all your testing showing or none of your testing showing. And one of the neat things is we were strain-specific concentrates, black box vape pen, and ABC oils, right? ABC for alcohol, butane, CO2 extraction. Okay. Black box vape pen, 2012, there was only us and Open on the West Coast and in Colorado. There was no other legal market scene besides Colorado and Washington. Right. So if you had it and you were involved, you were a contraband, right? You were a black market here, as we used to call them. Anyway, we had cards. Everything we did was through the regulated process. But the idea is, here's my testing. We had 2,000 tests. Not one was ever required. It was for residual solvents. It's an inebriant, so obviously you could tell if it doesn't work. But how would you know whether you had butane in your oil, right? When we were doing a butane extraction, how do you know if you have ethanol in your CO2? Right. One of the dark things of cartridges of CO2 was they would leave the ethanol. That's how it would work. People didn't realize that for the first 6 or 7 years, right? I mean, when you got to we eventually would have been ABC, and then we added D, but that didn't happen. I didn't figure out fractional distillation until about 17.
Okay.
Well, 17. So 17, 18, 19 is when the core of this type of education was for schools and tools. But the Queen of the Hill it's kind of like cutting teeth on the West Coast in Washington State. Every day in 13 different markets, 20 to 30 vendors with cards would show up, and there would be thousands of people that would come through the door. And as long as you had a card, you could access. As long as you had a grower's card, you could be selling your wares, but it had to be tested. And every patient on the planet could see your testing, and not just clean or dirty, but what are the terpenes? People would come in for certain profiles, right? And at the end of the day, that's how you had to participate. And so having a bigger, better product made more effective, cleaner, tastier, smoother, whether it be cotton candy all the way to, actual flour, that was the culture of it. And people could go on and they could see it. And so that really created a level of quality, right? Like the solvent list, July 15th, 2015, they got rid of all the BHO in the state except for ours because we were batch tested. Turned out doing good business allowed us access to a market when everyone else could. We literally, if we had Blue Dream, we had 150 tests. So we could put the first on our testing, it said the month, the day, and whether it was an A, B, or C, and whether it was the first through 10th run of the day. And so as a result, we could distribute our product, which we did in, packaged form through regulated stores. So the market so created a hybridized, like basically the best quality product for the patient on earth, because people could walk in and if they didn't like it, they could go next. And if you didn't have good products, you couldn't afford that $250 rent every day.
Right.
It was a really neat culture. And when it was no more BHO, that solventless scene between 15 and 16 blew up. There were 800 stores that needed concentrates, and there was only us with the BHO. Right. And so suddenly that dry sift, places like Greener Today, they had a half a dozen stores, and they didn't sell anything besides solventless. And I'm talking about 2015. You couldn't buy anything in there that had an A, B, or a C in it.
Right.
Super cool. You're like, well, wait a minute, CO2 is solventless, isn't it? And they're like, yeah. So there wasn't any CO2 on the shelf either. I mean, it was a dry sift or a bubble, water or air. And so it just created a really a wonderful culture. And obviously you saw it spread across the country when a lot of brands started opening up, not so much California, but across the country. You see these small artisan people come, you're like, gosh, how do you have all this? Kind of like what we're doing for Miss Hunter. How did this all created? Well, we were doing cartridges in 12. We got away from them by 16 because once someone enters that market, then we move to the next thing. And that's when Schools of Tools opened in 15, taught the fractional distillation, along with another 30 classes, right? Pesticide remediation in states where you could do it, etc. We were education, equipment, facility design, product license, and tenancies, because I have what I call my alumni. I've set up 200 licensees across North America. I mean, I've got SJR from Maine and Mass that are open. They have stores in Montego Bay, Jamaica right now, right? You've got the Green Lion guys. Some of them became Dose, right? Billy Liebitz was down there the last 4 years running a farm, a lab, and a store. And so I kind of live vicariously through them as they've grown up. It allows me, hey, you guys like to sell this product, or can we do this project? A lot of times it's just information. If we're looking for like our terpenes, when we got them out there, I needed to know. And so being able to send out samples to my regulated market operators, if it doesn't survive in the regulated market, it's not real. But you're a hobbyist if you can't survive in a market where it's about the patient comes in and either they say yes or no.
Right.
So that's kind of, we check the durability of our products that way.
So we have a question. Are there specific terpenes that you believe are underappreciated in cannabis medicine or experience?
All of them. I can put these terpenes, I can put a drop into a bottle of water, and I've done this. I've had platforms where you had bottled water with just the terpenes, there's no cannabis whatsoever. And at first I thought this is some weird Facebook anomaly or something, but at the end of the day, I had people coming in that were swearing that they didn't have to take their prednisone. And I mean, I'm talking about dozens in the stores, and they would come as far away, like when we were in Ada, as far away as from Texas. And I don't know why that would, but suddenly this is what second thing is the shudder, shaking. People that had tremors.
Yes.
And the last lady I saw, she was probably the most afflicted I'd seen. And when she tried it, it didn't stop them. And I was very sorry. I'm like, I'm sorry, this doesn't help. She's like, honey, you don't understand. My worst days, this is exhausting right now. And she was moving. She's like, right now, this is very mild. She goes, on my worst days, I can take this and it'll cut the peak off, you know?
Right.
And so terpenes, who would have thought? Why did I put it in water? So people could try it and understand what it was. Because if you smell it, it's not botanical. It's not fake. It'll smell herbal. You're like, what is that? Okay. Well, diluted into a little drop into 12 ounces of water, suddenly it's so rich you couldn't drink that bottle in 3 cities. Because it's so rich, you can drink it like, oh my God, you could taste it. If you hate the taste of cannabis, you will not like this water. But if you love the strain-specific aspect of it, you're like, that's what it'll live, because your palate's different than smoking is different than tasting. But digress. But yes, I believe that medicinally, terpenes are the #1 overlooked part of this plant. If you look at distillate, people don't dab it, right? Because it doesn't stick around 6 or 7 minutes.
No.
If you try these terpenes in a distillate, it is heady, like 15 to 20 minutes. I've done it at Neat Can. I did it for a bunch of buyers. I've done it in California as well. We were able to come down and do a demo. And I had every buying agent in there sitting there like, holy shit, it's heady as hell. And half of them didn't show up because it was disty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so what is the difference? The terpenes. How can I explain it? Not at all. I
So-
can just tell you it's part of the medicine. And it's one of the most important parts, I would think.
No, absolutely. Charles used to tell people all the time, THC brings you to the party. Terpenes stick around and party with you. You know
Yeah, no,
what I
it does. It gives it that stay. That's why we can see something that's high terp and low T. And the
Mhm.
effect is like, or right now, my big thing I've kind of discovered is as we're making our rosin gummies and doing these many value-added products, taking those edible rosin and smoking it is different than just the bright white.
mean?
And what is it? Is it full plant? You know, obviously it's a different effect and I love it, right? Sometimes we can get a little too narrow. Distillate's a great example. Not bad for an edible, but just to have a non-terpene distillate in a cartridge, I mean, why?
So another question is, hang on. What inspired you to open the Terpene Station and how did you first get into terpenes?
Well, I was in Oregon. I grew up I got adopted and brought out to Oregon. And cannabis culture is very big in Oregon. So it's not uncommon for your little 11, 12, 13-year-olds to be out there growing their pot plants that are probably going to freeze in the fall, and their parents are hunting them so they don't get in trouble. And if they did do it and they weren't criminals with other types of things going on, they would get a slap on the wrist. Even so much as the kids, I remember my dad would take kids into outings and he would be so disappointed when these little 13-year-olds would find Kabinzi mushrooms and take them. And he's like, why can't they just appreciate the nature? Why can't they appreciate the morel or the chanterelle? Why do they have to take something that's an inebriant? And of course, he was worried they could have poisoned themselves. But the idea is like, Dad, kids are kids. But that's the kind of culture that is on the West Coast, right? I'm not saying it's for everyone, but if at least they're not stealing cars and breaking into houses, okay? Right, and you're like, well, who showed them this? They all know it. Okay, their uncles and grandpa, they have the culture of it. And so cannabis, for me, I was involved. Then I went to school, got a career, right? Was running clubs in Seattle. My dad got sick in 2000. That's the truth of it, okay? And I went from, I remember the first time he got sick, he was sick. And I don't know why I thought, well, we'll get him a good meal, right? Let's go get him a decent plate of food. And he got sick in the restaurant, was all embarrassed, okay? So I take him outside. I roll him a joint. I handed it to him, and I had no idea what was in it. In my whole life, I never worried about my own health. Suddenly,
It's okay.
Suddenly, my father's health and what I was giving him, it became like a lightning bolt. And I knew I had to start producing our own medicine, or I had no idea what was in it. Right? In those days, they were, paraquat and all sorts of stuff. And so, year 2000, I was 8 years out of college, and I went and got myself some grow equipment and started hunting CBD because my mom's a bit of a teetotaler, so she didn't want any inebriant. My dad had never smoked anything in his whole life. His brother had died from cancer, so he was just vehement against smoking. I finally got him to try the volcano, and I learned if I took the volcano, put it in the refrigerator for 15 minutes and cool it down to the point where he can inhale it. Because it's so important when we're first getting people the medicine that we don't run them off, right?
Yeah.
If they have a bad experience, they'll never come back, right? It could be paranoia, it could be harshness of smoking, etc. Right? And so most people, we started them with CBD, right? My dad got CBD. We grew 200 strands and tested them, and couldn't get a single one over 15% CBD, and couldn't get a single one under 2% THC. It was a nightmare. And why did I not want THC? My dad was a teetotaler. He didn't drink. He didn't smoke. He does not want to get inebriated. So I was looking for medicine that wouldn't get him high.
Yeah.
And then my mom, because she didn't trust anything, we didn't even get the analytics on Washington until 11. So even the labs we were sending out to, who's to say, right? One, getting the testing back and realizing it's hot, suddenly you just broke the law because you mailed, you know what I mean? But, we had friends everywhere. And so it was easy for us to just like, here, there's medicine, the clone could travel because it wasn't hot. And so, and we all know it's hemp, right? There's no question, right? The book published 79 referred to it as hemp. That's what everyone's ran with since then. Is it a cannabis plant that's any different? No. It's the same medicine. It's just defined legally by whether it's over or under a 0.3. So my dad brought me to the table. He was gone by 8. By then, he lived in a place called Senior Estates in Woodburn, Oregon, and there's 5,000 houses there. They're all past 65 or older. And so there was a massive amount of people. Really started with the people's seizures. We helped by 2012, we had helped probably 500 of them. And so we started seeing where 1 out of 3 would be complicated by the THC. So they can only have the CBD. And, so we started, and that doesn't mean that's statistically true. It was our experience to what we were giving away. But we weren't charging, and there was no benefit to anybody. It either helped you or it didn't. To this day, I still have, God forbid, but, on the phone today talking, one of our guys had just passed from renal cell carcinoma. The other gentleman passed because he had the arthritis, and these certain types of things with the arthritis can cause certain liver issues. I got to be careful what I say. Same thing about the other thing was from the hepatitis, same deal. That medicine, the interferon that people took, for some whatever reasons, they have complications today. And so these types of things happen. But what I learned from my dad was when he got sick, I took him to Gilda's Club, and I found a place where there was like 25 people in there that had renal cell carcinoma. There's a group of people from 18 to like 80. And some of them, they had just gotten it. Some of them, they had it for years. Some of them were survivors. And I got to listen to these kids talk about how more their bowels. 21 years old, and she messed herself at the mall. Why? Because the pharmacist when he said, well, it can give you side effects. He didn't say wear a damn diaper and don't go far. Right? Colonoscopy, they tell you don't go far, stay at home. Right? When you're doing your prep a couple of days before, but that misinformation, how common is renal cell carcinoma? How often does that pharmacist prescribe that? It's in the print, but how do you read it and take it versus, this spectrum or this spectrum, which part of it am I on? So I thought my dad was older. He had dementia. I thought it was just his age. And then I find out from being in that group that suddenly it's the medicine. And the kid says, well, that's the first one. And once that has the side effects, then like a Pinchenko machine, they drop you down to medicine 2, 3, 4. And so I realized in that experience that practicum and putting the sick together. You've got Parkinson's. I have a group of Parkinson's patients. They're the ones that are going to know what treatment, what foods to watch out for, what doesn't work. And so I just tried to get out of the way and facilitate putting the people that suffer together. And that's what brought me to the table. Terpene Station, it's a long journey. Tools and tools evolved. At this point in my life, the last 4 years is just about licensing. We haven't taken open enrollment in almost 5.5 years in schools and tools. So we really didn't take anyone outside of our initial alumni since 2019. We do the C1D1 will help. We could do, certainly help you on the engineering side. There's things that we do, but for the most part, I've really simplified. I've got a little mushroom brand in Jamaica. I've got things that I'm doing in different places. And so it's just really what's in my head, understanding the market dynamics and how to create profitability, which a lot of that is simply limiting your overhead, maximizing your position in this market. You're not going to have all the money in the world. You're not going to have all the experience in the world. So it's a yield curve. How do you make your place? Well, I believe, transparency, clean, green, guaranteed. That's what SSC was, right? We were clean because we batch tested everything every time. We were green because we're the first people there in Washington to get the closed loop extractors. The first people to buy gas from Central in the state of Washington, butane, so we weren't open blowing, never did. Yeah. And then guaranteed because we had a lifetime battery on our pens, and that was 12 through 16. When people said, how can you afford to do it? Well, I tell them Energizer and Duracell doesn't sell oil. Yeah. And that was a good course for us in transparency. I thought it would all blow up that way. To me, there's no place today where any patient can just go and see every brand in the entire state. Just go in there to the analytical and say, I want to check X, Y, or Z. See every product they ever made from the first time they submitted testing and see every failure they've ever had. right? Full transparency. You didn't have to, but no one would want to buy your product if you didn't. Like, what are you doing? And we would test our competitors all the time. Just if we saw us, we would test to see if they really were honorable and honest, or is this, unfortunately, what in the music entertainment business they would call the rock and roll hustle, right? In other words, if you say it's 65%, is it 65% or is it 25%?
Right.
I know they're not accurate. There could be 20% variance, but at the end of the day, you know, we all know what is and isn't effective efficacy, right?
Yeah.
So Terpene Station is really Miss Newell working with Kirk in this space of the kitchen, manufacturing her products at the point where he was ready to exit, which was the final testing. Well, final form testing kind of changed his model because he was solventless, handcrafted, baked today, right? This week at the very least. He had, you know, the cookie dough and the different things he made in the fridges, and then he would produce it. And he didn't have to put glycol in the muffin. So when they changed the final form and he realized that model wasn't going to be something that he could do the way he wanted to do it, then that's when he decided to exit. And I can do nothing but respect that. We are still, you know, we have a Keith infused. We are starting to do his Lebanese hash that he did, the dry sip. We're continuing that. Yeah.
Hash, y'all.
Yes. And the rosin gummies, simply because they're more potent, it's a 500 milligram. It's kind of hard to get, you know, through a butter infusion or something else. If we're just using like Keith, it's kind of difficult to get a 50 milligram, you know, brownie. Right. If you're not using a distillate, if you're not using a rosin, you're not using live resin, if you're talking about extracting it with an oil, I mean, your better butter machine or whatever your system is, even if it's just dry keef, it's 28 to 45% potency. It's kind of hard to get a small brownie that's going to be 50 milligrams consistent. When I start with a rosin that's activated at 77%, it's easy, you know. So, but that's what brought the Terpene Station online. Is Miss Newell's been doing the LTD, and it just found a home. So this is kind of the natural evolution of it.
So where they're located at, if you are in Oklahoma, is 8333 South Shields in OKC. And every Saturday at 4 p.m. is whenever they do the Queen of the Hill race. And you are welcome to participate in that. Please bring your Oklahoma medical marijuana card with you and get ready to laugh and love, man. It's a great time. It's fun. Ollie is super knowledgeable, as you can tell. He is, you know, right on it when it comes to terpenes and stuff. I'm actually excited to work with them because I want them to build me like a terpene palette that works for me. You know what I mean? So, all right, guys, we are 1 minute out from the end of the show. And so, Ollie, we are going to definitely bring you back on in the future. I appreciate you being the first guest on the first episode of Patients for Safe Access podcast. So thank you very, very, very much. And also, Hunter has Hunter's Coffee at the Terpene Station, and you definitely should get you some Hunter's Coffee while you're there too. All of their products are infused with the natural plant-derived terpenes. So get them, check them out, and give an honest review, and tell us what you think of the Terpene Station.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Hippie, we ready to close out?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you as well. That was a great show. I'm very interested. I'm a little disappointed, actually, real quick, if you don't mind. I was a big fan of Kosher Tangy, the terpenes. Do you know it?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I can no longer get it. It was it really worked well for me, and it was something I can't find any longer. And even trying to find it to grow it myself has been hard. I was just wondering if you had the ability to figure that out, or how to figure it out, or what I would do.
I don't have access to that genetic, but it's something I could think about, and it's out there. We just got to, you know,
we got to figure it out.
And anyone listening to this, if you know any farms, Oma, right, that have this genetic, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank you guys so very much. I'm going to play your song out, and we'll be out of here.
Let's dance it out.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you later. Peace.
Absolutely.
Let me get down.
It's just like a hamburger meat with a little bit of flour and seasoning on it. Yeah, you got it.
Stepping up strong with a righteous plea. Summer Parker fighting for you and me. Patients need what the doctor has said. Safe access now to the meds they bred. One love, one fight, don't you delay. Rights for the people in every way. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. Safe access is the anthem sound. The struggle is real, so is the fire. For health and hope, we climb higher. Stand with the ones who can't stand alone. For every voice deserves a throne. Compassion leads where the laws resist. A healer's heart can't coexist with barriers blocking what we deserve. The people's needs must be preserved.